I'm Tolly Plested and I use cageamateursuk.com.
Alright, we're joined by Leigh Remedios. He's the referee tonight at C.S.M.M.A 2. Pleasure meeting you, Leigh. Thanks
you
for doing
too.
the interview with us.
Thanks for having me.
Your main role tonight is to make sure no one gets hurt, basically. Or seriously, right, yeah?
Yeah, I'm the ref tonight, along with Danielle.
Danielle Curzon, as we know, top referee in England. She's done the Herb Dean course. You've also done a bit of fighting yourself. Can you tell us a bit about that?
I started fighting in 1997.
How old are you?
36.
Christ. Yeah, go
I should have get off the camera. Yeah. Over 21. And I've had a fair few fights.
Yeah.
I've done all right.
What's your main skills in fighting?
I find it depends where I compete. When I compete in the UK, I'm a strong grappler.
Right.
When I compete in the States, they consider me a striker.
In the States, yeah.
Because they tend to be more wrestling based over there.
So you've done it here and in the States.
I've fought in Europe and I fought in the UK. I fought in North America. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously England and Europe, there's not a lot of difference with the rules and all things like that. But do you find America a lot different to this country with the game that you're doing?
No. When I first started competing, the rules were really minimal. You couldn't bite and you couldn't eye gouge and that was it.
Right.
But as the sport's evolved and they've brought it, well, it wasn't MMA at the time, it was NHB,
right.
And the whole part. As they've brought in more rules and stuff, and it's become uniform across the board, it's very similar.
It is now, yeah. Do you think now, I mean, in England now, I mean, obviously you've been around a bit, what do you think of the standard now we've got in this country? Do you think it's...
I think we've got some really good fighters, I think, and I think it's probably due to the UFC getting more exposure. People over here are more aware of MMA, although they always call it cage fighting in the newspapers.
Yeah.
You know, you've got guys like Alex Reed, whether people like him or hate him, he does put the sport out there, you know, and people are aware of it, so we've got a lot of people competing, and I think the talent pool's a lot bigger.
There's a lot of younger people now getting into it as well, whereas obviously when you first started, MMA wasn't really... It wasn't founded, was it? It was like kind of you either did judo, you did, but now MMA is becoming one.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. When I first started fighting, a lot of it was style versus style.
Yeah.
You know, the guys that wanted to get anywhere, they realised the benefits of cross training. But I did a lot of competitions where I'd fight solely against a judo player or against a kickboxer.
Right.
And nowadays, as you say, people are so much more well-rounded.
Yeah.
MMA's a sport, and that's what they practice.
Yeah, I mean, because it showed in the early UFC days, you'd have a guy coming in with a gi on, doing judo, against a boxer, and you'd be looking, thinking, this doesn't look right, because you've got a guy in a gi and a guy dressed to box, as opposed to now you've got fight wear, and everyone looks the same, don't they?
Yeah.
It's kind of like... It's like playing on a football team and you having a different shirt on to the rest of the team. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I guess it would be like a rugby player against an NFL player or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But now, as you say, it's more streamlined. People know what they're doing, and it's a sport in its own right, rather than a combination of sports.
What's your best memory of your career from fighting?
Winning's awesome.
Yeah.
Losing's rubbish.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll be honest. Probably outside of the cage, I'd say my best memories are the community and the lifestyle and everything else. You know, getting to meet people, getting to travel.
Yeah.
That's probably the thing that I appreciate the most from what the sport's done for me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like here. You see, you can stand outside there and you see cage fighters coming and going. In other sports, you probably wouldn't have so much access. Like you certainly wouldn't see a football player walking past you to go to his match, would you? In the street, it's still low key MMA in England at the moment. Do you think it's like? Do you think if it did go to the big scale like UFC, do you think MMA would change? The way people are, the way we all, it's like a community, like you say.
In the UK?
In the UK, do you think if it did get to that UFC level, do you think it would change the way the sport is? You know, if people start becoming famous like a football player in MMA.
Well, I think they kind of are, aren't they? I mean,
yeah. I mean,
we have the UFC over here sometimes.
Yeah.
And around the middle of the last decade, we had cage rage was huge.
Yeah.
You know, so
C.S.M.M.A now, obviously, another one.
Yeah. I think when it was cage rage, it was massive though.
Yeah.
You know, when they were filling out Wembley Stadium, that was mental. You know, that was awesome. But I still think that, you know, I mean, I guess it's hard to say because I'm involved, but I think that most people in UK MMA are pretty accessible still. You know, there aren't really like many bad guys in the sport. No. You know, and I think we're quite lucky in that regard.
Yeah. So tonight you'll be is it 14 fights altogether? I'm
not sure. I think I'm doing 9 or 10 of them, and Danielle's doing 5, I think.
Yeah, so you're doing a percentage. What ones are you doing? Are you doing like the K1, the MMA, or?
I think it's just a mix of both.
Right,
yeah.
So you just don't know until sort of.
We have listed them out. I can't remember right off the top of my head because it was just briefly we had a look. I don't think that we're doing like I'm doing MMA and she's doing K1 or anything like that. I think Danielle has unfortunately I don't want to talk about her personal life too much.
That's fine.
But she just been at the doctor's and I'm going to do most of the workload tonight. Yeah. I think next time if we work together, she's going to make up for it. Yeah,
that's fine. Swings and roundabouts. The same as any job, I suppose. Does it when you first started reffing? Was you worried? Is it a different type of like when you're going in for a fight? Obviously, you probably feel nervous. Is it the same when you're reffing?
No,
no,
no, not at all. I guess it's the first time I did it. And I haven't been reffing very long. You know, I'm not a real experienced referee. No. You know, I've only done a handful of shows, I suppose. But no, it's nowhere near as nerve-wracking. I'm not going to get my face kicked in. No, so the fighters are much more terrified than I am.
Yeah, definitely. Do you get panicky about decision? Do you think if someone, there's a lot of controversy. I've seen a lot of fights lately. I saw one yesterday on KO MMA, and the guy was in the standing guillotine. He tapped out. Fight was stopped. And then the guy said to the ref, I didn't do it. I didn't tap. I was trying to push him off, and the fight continued. Do you think that there's a lot of this starting to come in the sport where people say, "Oh, I didn't tap"?
No, I think it happens. I don't think it's more common now than it ever has been.
No.
But if I'm reading your question right, yeah, I do get a little bit cautious because I'm very passionate about the sport. Yeah. It's very important to me, and I do realise that I could potentially have a fighter's fight record and career in my hands.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I do them right.
Yeah.
And yeah, that is something that does weigh on me. It's not the fact that the audience is there. Like if you're competing yourself, then it's your own record, and you want to perform well for everyone else. Yeah. But that's the one thing that I do care about. I want to make sure I do right by the fighters.
And by the sport, obviously, like you just said.
Yeah, exactly.
Is it, like, now, what was your record when you was doing, because obviously, was you doing just MMA when you was fighting, or was it a mixture?
I did some kickboxing fights and some judo fights and stuff before I did MMA.
Yeah.
But once I did MMA, generally, I stuck to MMA. I did some fights that weren't ever recorded. We were fighting in warehouses and all sorts.
Yeah.
I think my record's something like 19-9 or something like that.
So that's good. That is a really good record. 19 wins, 9 losses, 0 draws. Yeah, because
I've got about 3 draws on top. Yeah, sorry, I think I've got about 3 draws.
So it makes it even better as well. That's a really good MMA record because you look at like Randy Couture. He's nearly lost half of his fights. Yeah, he's still classed as a legend.
Well, in fairness, and I mean no disrespect to anyone that I've competed against, but he's fought at a high level. So he's fighting really good guys.
Yeah, but with him, he's fighting people at his level, you're fighting people at your level, so kind of when you look at it from a sports way, obviously they're at a higher level, but if you're fighting with guys that are on the same level as you, then it's similar.
Sure, I'll take that.
I do try and big people up, as you notice. Well, I think we're gonna have to let you go because I believe the.
Yeah, we've got to get on to the rules meeting.
Thanks for having a chat with us. It's been a pleasure.